It started on a Wednesday, no warning, no flashes of light, no alien mothership descending from the clouds, just rain, but not water, not ice, not fire, creatures, tiny, adorable creatures. They felt like soft, living snowflakes, drifting down onto cars, rooftops, sidewalks. Some bounced harmlessly off windows. Others landed right into the arms of startled pedestrians. They were cute. Round bodies, fluffy fur, shimmering eyes that blinked up at their new human companions. Some purred, some chirped, some nuzzled into the warmth of the people who held them. And somehow they understood us. People took them home. Kids begged their parents to keep one. News anchors laughed as they held up their own little creatures, trying to identify the species. Were they mammals? Reptiles? Something in between? Scientists had no answers, and for a while, it was fine, until it wasn't, because a week later, people started disappearing, and no one knew why. For the first 12 hours, things seemed manageable. Sure, the world had just been rained on by alien creatures, but people adapted quickly. Kids named their new pets. Families posted cute videos. Scientists tried to study them. But here's the thing about something no one understands. It doesn't stay cute for long. The first reports came in from Tokyo. A woman called emergency services, screaming about how her new pet, a small jelly-like creature with stubby legs, had walked through the walls of her apartment. Not into another room, through the walls. A few minutes later, she called again, this time sobbing, because her husband had disappeared. Not left the apartment, disappeared. Gone. No traces, no signs of struggle, just missing. Then in Berlin, firefighters responded to a burning apartment. At first, they thought it was just another electrical fire, until they saw the source, a tiny, floating, rodent-like creature, emitting flames from its fur. The fire didn't stop. Even with water, the building burned to the ground before they could figure out how to stop it. And then, in Ethan's pet shop in Chicago, something happened that changed everything. It was late. The store was closed. Ethan was watching the news, listening to anchors try to explain the bizarre events, when he heard it. Scratching. Not the normal kind. Not a dog pawing at a door or a cat sharpening its claws. This was deliberate. Scrape, scrape, coming from inside one of the cages. He turned. His heart froze. One of the alien pets, a round, fluffy creature with 6 tiny legs, was staring at him. And then it spoke. I am hungry. Ethan bolted upright, knocking over his chair. Nope, no way. He grabbed a broom, hoping, this was just some freaky coincidence. Maybe a parrot. Maybe some trick of his tired mind. But then, the creature's mouth opened and kept opening, wider and wider and wider, far beyond what should be physically possible. Rows of needle-thin teeth gleamed in the dim light. Ethan barely had time to react before the cage bars melted away, not bent, not broken, but liquefied. And then it lunged. That was the moment people realized. These weren't pets. They were something else entirely, and they were just getting started. The reports kept coming, faster, louder, more terrifying. The alien pets weren't just strange, they were dangerous. Governments scrambled for answers. Scientists tried to contain them. But it was too late, because by the time the world understood what was happening, the first city had already fallen. It happened in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The entire city went dark. No power, no signals, no people. Satellite footage showed nothing but empty streets, no movement, no bodies, just gone. And the only thing left behind? A writhing mass of alien creatures, spreading like a pulsing living carpet. By the morning, Sao Paulo was nothing but a silent ruin. And then it happened again. Paris, Bangkok, Los Angeles. One by one, the cities vanished. The world was losing. And the scariest part? We still didn't know why. Some of the creatures were still harmless, or at least they acted that way, purring, chirping, nuzzling against their humans like they had no idea what was happening. But others, they were changing, growing, evolving. And the people who had once cradled them, fed them, loved them, they were the first to go. A group of survivors in New York City tried to fight back. They barricaded themselves in an abandoned skyscraper, gathering whatever weapons they could find. One man, Marcus Lee, was a former soldier. He led the group, trained them. He believed they could outlast this until the things found them. It was 2:13 a.m. when the scratching started. Soft at first, then louder, until it sounded like 1,000 tiny claws scraping against the metal walls. Marcus ordered everyone to be silent, no movement, no sound. But then, a child screamed, and that was it. The creatures poured in, through the vents, the walls, the floors. Marcus fought. They all fought. Gunfire echoed through the building, but it wasn't enough. The last thing the world saw of Marcus Lee was a grainy, shaky live stream from his body camera, before his feed was consumed by a pair of glowing alien eyes. Then, static. By the time the sun rose, the skyscraper was empty, and the creatures were still there, waiting, breeding, multiplying. And we were running out of time. This wasn't just an invasion. This was an extermination. And the worst part? No one knew why. They were supposed to be just pets. Strange, exotic, chaotic, but pets nonetheless. And yet, as the days stretched into weeks, something changed. The alien creatures weren't just destroying everything in sight. They were organizing. It started small. A pack of the fluffy, tentacled squidlings were seen working together to corral a group of stray dogs, using their suction cup limbs to herd them like seasoned ranchers. The plasma-spewing hamsters? They weren't just running wild anymore. They were building nests, massive, glowing hives of pulsing energy in abandoned skyscrapers. And the feathered, chameleon-like creatures? They were vanishing, only to reappear in synchronized, tactical waves, ambushing anything that tried to resist them. That's when it became clear. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a takeover. In one of the last remaining human strongholds, deep inside an underground bunker, survivors gathered around flickering screens. Security cameras across the city showed the horrifying reality. The alien pets had divided territories, assigned roles. They were communicating. A shaky voice broke the silence. "They're building something." All eyes turned to the largest screen, where a drone feed showed a construction site at the heart of the city. The alien pets were stacking debris, forming massive spiraling structures glowing with an eerie pulsing light. Something was coming. A low growl rumbled from the back of the bunker. Eyes darted to the source. Max, a German shepherd, one of the few remaining trained military dogs. His fur bristled, his ears pinned back. He sensed something before the humans could. Then came the sound. A deep, vibrating hum, not from the speakers, but from above. The bunker trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. The power flickered. Then, silence. And then, scratching. It started slow, light at first, like a single claw against metal. Then another. Then dozens, hundreds. The realization hit like a hammer. They had found them. Someone screamed. Someone grabbed a weapon. Someone whispered a prayer. And then the walls caved in. The bunker collapsed in a violent eruption of dust and steel. Concrete shattered like glass, sending jagged chunks tumbling onto the panicked survivors. A thick cloud of debris filled the air, choking out all sound except for the deep, guttural growls of the alien creatures clawing their way inside. Someone shouted, "Get to the tunnels!" But there were no tunnels. The pets had learned. They had blocked every possible escape. In the flickering emergency lights, the creatures emerged. Silhouettes of writhing tentacles, glowing eyes and sharp, twitching claws. The squidlings oozed through the cracks, their gelatinous bodies squeezing into places no human could fit. The chameleon-like feathered hunters materialized out of the shadows, blending perfectly with the destruction around them. The first gunshot rang out, then another, but it was useless. Max, the German shepherd, lunged at the nearest alien pet, his powerful jaws locking onto a fleshy tentacle. The creature let out a warbling shriek, flailing wildly, but Max didn't let go. His growl was deep, primal, a sound that sent chills through even the most hardened soldiers. Then a new sound, a high-pitched chittering screech, like laughter. The pets were playing. The horrifying realization spread like wildfire. This wasn't war. This was sport. A survivor swung a steel pipe at one of the creatures, landing a direct hit. The alien stumbled, blinking in confusion, then wagged its tail. Another survivor fired a round straight into the chest of a plasma hamster. It tumbled backward, then popped back up, puffing out its fur like a triumphant show dog. They weren't trying to kill. They were toying with them. The bunker doors groaned, then bent inward. Something massive was coming. A shadow loomed beyond the entrance, its glowing, shifting form too large to belong to any pet they had seen before. And then the voice. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was something else. "You have entertained us well," it cooed, an unnatural, layered sound that echoed inside their skulls. The survivors froze. "The pets have chosen their keepers," the voice continued. "Those who survive shall be rewarded." A pulse of light exploded through the room, blinding them. And then silence. When the dust settled, only a handful remained standing. The rest were gone, vanished. The alien pets sat, watching with their glowing eyes. They didn't attack. They didn't move. They simply waited. Max let out a low, warning growl. The survivors looked at one another, their minds racing. They weren't just fighting an invasion anymore. They were being evaluated. The silence stretched. No one dared to move. The alien pets sat motionless, their otherworldly eyes reflecting the dim emergency lights like polished stones. The survivors, still blinded by the pulse of energy, blinked rapidly, struggling to understand what had just happened. And then one of the pets moved. A long, serpentine creature slithered forward, its iridescent scales shifting color with each movement. It stopped in front of a trembling soldier, tilting its head, its three tongues flicking out like a snake tasting the air. The soldier raised his rifle, but the creature did not attack. Instead, it purred. The sound was strange, deep, resonant, vibrating in the bones. The other pets followed. One by one, they approached the remaining survivors, their alien bodies pulsing with strange energy. A towering six-legged feline brushed against a woman's side, letting out a throaty, rumbling growl that sounded almost affectionate. A crab-like creature with glowing tendrils nudged an injured scientist, its clicking mandibles releasing a soft musical chime. Then Max barked. The German shepherd stood in the center of the room, his fur bristling, his sharp eyes scanning the creatures. His ears flicked, his muscles tensed. He recognized what was happening. The pets were choosing. The survivors looked at one another, realization setting in. They weren't prisoners. They were keepers. The alien voice returned, slithering into their minds like smoke. "Your kind have proven adaptable." The air shifted. The pressure in the room changed. It felt like they were standing on the edge of a cliff, a force neither seen nor heard weighing down on them. The voice continued, unhurried, patient. "The universe is vast, wild, full of things beyond your comprehension. We do not keep pets. We raise warriors." The meaning hit them like a hammer. These creatures weren't just companions. They were weapons. Living, breathing, intelligent weapons. Sent here to be trained. The survivors, once prey, had just become caretakers of something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. Max stepped forward, his stance proud, his gaze locked onto the alien horde. One of the creatures, a massive lion-like beast with shifting, glassy skin, bowed its head. Submission, a bond. The survivors inhaled sharply. The invasion was never about conquest. It was a test, and they had just been recruited for something far greater than survival. The realization hit like a thunderclap. The invasion wasn't about destroying Earth. It was about selecting handlers. The alien pets had been watching, testing, waiting to see who would survive, who would adapt, who would be worthy. The survivors weren't prisoners. They were chosen. A soldier broke the silence first. "So, what now?" His voice was hoarse, raw from the hours of fighting, running, barely surviving. Max let out a low, warning growl. The German shepherd was tense but alert, his sharp eyes flicking between the creatures. The pets, once terrifying monsters, were now calm, watching, waiting. And then the voice returned. "Now you train." A blinding pulse of light shot through the bunker. The walls melted away, revealing something impossible. They weren't on Earth anymore. The survivors stumbled backward, their bodies shivering from the sheer scale of what they saw. They stood on the edge of a colossal battlefield, a landscape twisting, shifting, changing. The ground pulsed with energy, alive in ways that defied logic. Towering monoliths loomed in the distance, glowing with strange symbols. In the sky, two suns burned, casting an eerie golden glow over the horizon. This wasn't a battlefield, it was a coliseum. The survivors barely had time to react before the alien pets moved. The six-legged feline leaped forward, its claws extending like blades, striking against a translucent force field that hadn't been there a second ago. The chameleon-feathered hunters flickered out of sight, vanishing into the shifting terrain. The squidlings merged with the ground, dissolving into liquid and reforming elsewhere like living shadows. The pets weren't just warriors, they were evolving. The survivors exchanged uneasy glances. If they were meant to train these creatures, how? A metallic hum filled the air. Armor formed over their bodies, not human armor, but something alien. It pulsed with energy, shifting and shaping itself like living metal, adjusting to their movements. Weapons materialized in their hands, not guns, not knives, but something else, something alive. Then the voice echoed again, a slow, deliberate whisper in their minds. "Fight!" And the battle began. A survivor barely dodged as a plasma hamster, now twice its original size, lunged at him, its fur igniting like a wildfire. He twisted, swinging his weapon, only to find it reacted to his thoughts. The blade expanded, warping into a whip of searing blue energy, cracking against the ground and sending a shock wave through the battlefield. A scientist screamed as a serpentine creature coiled around her, its iridescent scales vibrating at an unnatural frequency. But as soon as she calmed, the creature did too. It wasn't attacking. It was mirroring. The survivors began to understand. This wasn't just combat. This was bonding. They weren't just fighting with the pets. They were fighting as one. Max let out a sharp bark, his eyes burning with fierce determination. His armor flared, fusing with his body, his muscles doubling in strength. The lion-like beast beside him roared in response, mirroring his stance, his instincts. The battlefield came alive. The survivors and their alien pets moved as one unit, a synchronized chaos of energy, motion, and raw power. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans weren't running. They weren't hiding. They weren't just surviving. They were becoming something more. And the universe was about to find out just how dangerous humans could be. The battlefield burned with the raw energy of combat. The survivors, once scattered and desperate, now moved like warriors born for this moment. Their weapons pulsed with an alien rhythm, their bodies encased in the living armor that adapted to their movements. And the pets? They were no longer just creatures. They were partners. The voice returned, its presence heavier now, laced with something almost satisfied. "You are ready?" The battlefield shattered. The survivors barely had time to react before the world peeled away like the layers of an illusion, revealing a sight that stole their breath. They were no longer standing on Earth, or whatever simulation had been crafted for their training. They stood on a massive platform of obsidian glass suspended in space, and before them, a fleet. A fleet so large it defied comprehension, stretching beyond the limits of sight. Ships of impossible design, glowing with the same shifting energy that coursed through their weapons and armor. The air vibrated as figures emerged from the shadows. They weren't human, but they weren't just the pets either. They were masters of war, tall, otherworldly beings with armor that shimmered like liquid metal, eyes like burning stars. Their presence commanded the very space around them. And then the truth was spoken. "You were never the invaders," the voice said. The survivors exchanged glances. Their bodies were still tense for a fight, but something deep inside told them to listen. "The war did not begin with us. It did not begin with you." A holographic rift split the sky, revealing another army. It was monstrous, shifting, writhing abominations of flesh and metal. Creatures that made the alien pets seem almost tame by comparison. The survivors felt it, the sheer hatred radiating from the vision. "This is the true enemy." The figures stepped forward, their presence exuding a quiet, deadly certainty. "For eons we fought alone, but no longer. The selection is complete. You are not captives. You are not pawns." A pause. "You are soldiers." The survivors looked at one another, at their pets, at their new weapons and armor, their new bodies. Forged through chaos, adapted for war. This was never an invasion. It was a recruitment. One of the survivors let out a breathless laugh. "So let me get this straight. We thought the pets were trying to take over the world, but really we were being drafted into an intergalactic army?" The voice hummed, almost amused. "You are the chosen handlers. And now the real war begins." The fleet loomed before them. The battle ahead was something no human had ever conceived. But as the survivors stepped forward, their alien pets standing tall beside them, one thing was clear. Earth was no longer alone. And for the first time in history, humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win.